The organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is.
Martina Navratilova stopped a live Australian Open broadcast to say this. The organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is here. 18 Grand Slam singles titles, 9 Wimbledon championships, the most decorated female player tennis has ever produced. And she used her voice, not in a post-match interview, not in a quiet podcast days later, but live on air, in real time, to call out a Grand Slam tournament by name because of 1-2-0-year-old Filipina who, at that very moment, was having her pre-tournament press conference watched by 171,000 people online, nearly 6 times the audience Carlos Alcaraz drew that same week. Not a match, not a highlights package, a press conference. And right now, as you're watching this, thousands of Filipino fans are standing outside the Foro Italico in Rome before Alex Eala has hit a single ball in the main draw. The question is whether Rome is about to repeat the biggest mistake Melbourne made in January, or whether the ancient city is ready to write a completely different story. Stay with me, because this one goes deep. Let's start with that number, because the tennis world has genuinely not finished processing it. At the 2026 Australian Open, Eala's pre-tournament press conference, a routine media session, journalists in a room asking standard questions pulled 171,000 live online viewers. Carlos Alcaraz, the reigning French Open champion, 2-time Wimbledon winner, the man widely considered the most exciting player on the men's tour right now, drew 29,000. Coco Gauff drew 29,000. Aryna Sabalenka, the defending Australian Open champion, the woman who had won the tournament the year before and was back to defend her title on her home court in terms of form and reputation, drew 9,000. Eala, ranked outside the top 40, drew nearly 6 times the audience of the planet's top-ranked male player for a press conference. Before a single ball was struck, the fans in packed cafes in Manila, the diaspora communities staying up through the night in Los Angeles, in London, in Riyadh, tracking her every move, refreshing their feeds, watching a media session, the way most people watch a final. Those people were not wrong about what they were witnessing. They were simply earlier than everyone else. And those 171,000 viewers are the scoreboard that the rankings table cannot yet show. Then came the 16th of January, 2026, and the cue that broke the Australian Open's own story about itself. Melbourne's Filipino community numbers around 60,000 strong. The tournament knew this. The tournament also knew, because the data was right in front of them, that this player was the single most watched athlete at their own event before competition had even begun. And yet, when the schedule was finalized for Eala's first round singles match, the assignment was Court 6. Court 6 holds approximately 1,500 people. What showed up outside that court was not 1,500 people. Families who had driven across Melbourne, couples who had booked the day off work, fans who had traveled from interstate specifically for this match. They arrived hours early. They stood in a line that stretched hundreds of yards through the grounds, and when the match started, security began turning people away at the entrance because there was physically no space left. Hundreds of fans who had done everything right, planned ahead, arrived early, made the journey, were refused entry to a tennis match at one of the 4 biggest tournaments on earth, and the court next door and the court after that sat with empty seats. Now put yourself inside Melbourne Park as an Australian Open official watching this happen in real time. You have a player who, in terms of pure online engagement, outperformed every single athlete at your tournament. You have a crowd outside a court that has physically exceeded its capacity. You had the information, you had the power to schedule her differently before any of this happened. And the official response, after the backlash came rolling in, was that the tournament would take it as a learning for next year. That sentence, that one sentence, is the most revealing thing any major tennis institution has said in years. Read it carefully. It does not say we got it wrong. It does not say we underestimated her. It says we will learn, which means At the moment it was happening, they still did not fully understand what they were looking at. And it confirms that Rome, watching all of this from across the world, now has a live choice sitting in front of it. Repeat the mistake or be smarter than Melbourne was. Now let's talk about the voices that went on record about it, because the weight of who spoke matters here. Martina Navratilova, 18 Grand Slam singles titles, 9 Wimbledon championships, regarded alongside Steffi Graf as one of the 2 greatest female players in the history of the sport. She is not a television personality hired to generate noise. She is the most credentialed voice the women's game has ever produced. And during the Australian Open broadcast, she said this directly: organizers need to keep more in mind where the players are from and what the actual fan base is, because there is a massive Filipino audience in Melbourne and in Australia. Keep that in mind next time you make the schedule. She was not there to compliment Eala's backhand. She was not marveling at her fitness levels. She was making a structural demand of Grand Slam institutions that they reorganize how they operate around the reality that this player now creates wherever she goes. Standing right beside her, Lindsay Davenport, the 1,999 Wimbledon champion and former world #1, called Eala probably the most famous female from the Philippines and certainly one of the most famous people in Philippine sporting history, and said plainly that she probably needed to be on a bigger show court. On BBC Radio 5 Live, Anne Keathavong, Great Britain's Billie Jean King Cup captain, said she couldn't believe the cues and asked who exactly was on the scheduling team. 3 voices, 3 separate platforms, 1 verdict. The scheduling decision was wrong, the people responsible for it were wrong, and the sport's most credible figures said so publicly, on the record, on international television. Those statements are now part of the permanent record of the Eala era. And then there's V. V is a Filipina who lives in Sydney. For Alex Eala's first round match at the 2026 Australian Open, she did not watch on television from home. She bought a ticket, packed her things, and traveled to Melbourne, not for a holiday, not for the tournament in general, but specifically, solely, entirely for one Eala match. When asked why she made that journey, she said she always carries the flag and the country proudly. That's something which resonates with everyone. She's becoming a national hero. Everyone is starting to stop what they're doing and tune in to watch her matches. That is one woman, one face, one trip. Now multiply her by the thousands who showed up that same day, all making versions of the same calculation, all arriving at the same destination for the same reason. And then ask yourself what all those people did when the next major moment arrived. Because the answer is standing outside the Foro Italico right now. Before Alex Eala has played a single point in the main draw of the 2026 Italian Open, verified videos and confirmed reports have already documented thousands of Filipino fans gathered in Rome. Eala was filmed outside the venue, thanking supporters who had flown to Italy before the draw had even been made. Ticket demand has surged in ways the tournament had not projected. The patterns forming around the Foro Italico's marble gates look identical to the patterns that formed around Court 6 inches Melbourne, with one crucial difference. Rome has the advantage of having watched Melbourne's story unfold. They did not wait for a result before they booked those flights. They did not wait for a ranking milestone or a title. They arrived in one of the most historically loaded cities in the world on faith. And in this particular story, faith has a long track record of being repaid. Here is why the Rome question matters beyond the tennis. Li Na won the 2011 French Open. And what followed was not just a trophy, it was the detonation of an entire Chinese tennis market that the WTA had spent years trying to unlock through conventional marketing channels. One player, one title, one cultural ignition point. And the sport's commercial relationship with China was transformed in a way that no amount of outreach campaigns or brand partnerships had ever achieved. Tournament directors are now explicitly invoking that moment when the conversation turns to Eala. The Southeast Asian diaspora spread across Melbourne, Dubai, Riyadh, Rome, Los Angeles, and every major WTA city does not simply represent devoted fans. It represents a commercial infrastructure the sport has never fully activated, and the Italian Open is not a passive bystander in this. FITP President Angelo Bonaghi has been publicly and persistently making the case for Rome to be recognized as a 5th Grand Slam. What that bid needs, beyond courts and prize money and infrastructure, is global visibility. The kind of visibility that is generated when the entire Philippines goes online to watch what is happening at the Foro Italico on a Tuesday afternoon. This is not a subplot. This is the main event. Now let's set the actual tennis stakes, because 8 days ago, the clay gave Eala a difficult lesson. To the 24th of April 2026, she walked off the court at the Mutua Madrid Open after losing 2-6, 1-6 to Elise Mertens in under an hour. No contested third set, no dramatic tiebreak, no silver lining buried in the numbers. It was her 3rd loss in 5 clay court matches this season. It dropped her from her career high of around number 29, reached in March, back to approximately number 44 inches the world. The clay had not been kind, and the scoreline did not try to disguise it. She could have gone to Catalonia. The WTA 125 event there had a lighter draw, softer competition, accessible ranking points she genuinely needed. She did not go, she chose Rome. The biggest clay event outside Roland Garros, the deepest possible field, an environment with 0 margin for error and 20 ranking points to defend, meaning every single win here is pure gain on the scoreboard, a completely clean ledger. She did not take the easier path because she is not built to take the easier path. Greg Rusedski, the 1,997 US Open finalist, addressed her clay struggles directly and said, "The losses she takes, this is part of the learning experience. She's too good a player. She'll figure it out." What I like is her resilience. It's the harder hitters. It's being on tour week in, week out, and you're gonna take some bruising losses. It's part of the learning experience. That word resilience is the one that keeps following her. And the decision to come to Rome after Madrid, instead of retreating to somewhere smaller and safer, is the evidence behind the word. That choice, more than any ranking number, tells you who this player actually is. Consider the full picture of what has already happened before. A single point is contested this week in Rome. 171,000 people watched her answer journalists' questions, while the world's best male player drew 29,000. And 1/8-time Grand Slam champion interrupted a live broadcast not to praise her game, but to demand that institutions restructure themselves around her existence. A woman flew from Sydney to Melbourne to watch one match and described witnessing the emergence of a national hero. Thousands of people have now flown to Italy and are standing outside a 1-year-old tennis stadium today, not because she called them there, but because they decided Rome was worth it. The fans who were there from the beginning, who tracked her matches when the courts were small and the streams were unreliable and the rankings did not yet reflect what they already understood, those people were never chasing a dream. They were tracking a certainty that the rest of the sport was too slow to register. The Foro Italico is just the latest institution catching up to what that community recognized long before the official world arrived. The 2026 Italian Open is not Alex Eala's chance to prove something to tennis. It is tennis's chance to prove it has finally learned something about her. And the road ahead makes these next several days even sharper. Roland Garros follows directly the French Open on clay, the surface where she is currently 2 to 3 inches, 2026. Then Eastbourne, where she was a finalist in 2025 and where her grass court points defense begins in earnest. And then, eventually, the Australian Open 2027, the tournament that promised publicly and on the record to take it as a learning. That is the moment when Melbourne either delivers on that word or exposes it as hollow. Rome is the first checkpoint on that entire road. So here is the question worth leaving in the comments right now. If Eala reaches the quarterfinal in Rome, does the Foro Italico give her the showcase court she has clearly, demonstrably, statistically already earned? Or does Italian tennis look at the queues forming outside its own gates and make the exact same decision Melbourne made on January 16th? The next several days will answer that. Every match, every crowd scene, Every scheduling decision made by Rome's tournament directors will be covered here as it develops. If you are not subscribed yet, you are about to watch the most closely followed clay court run of 2026 unfold in real time. And when the defining moment arrives, and it is coming, you will want to have been here before it happened.